start chat soon. Couple videos we're gonna watch tonight, but I wanna order me some food first. So I'll probably set y'all up for something to watch while I do that. We doing some Epstein files tonight, man. Can't seem to get away from dude. So if you in the chat, shout out to you. I'm on Twitch, I'm on YouTube, I'm on something else I don't really remember. Oh, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. How could I forget about y'all? I'm so sad about this copyright stuff because I would have played music for y'all. Don't really know how the music works, but soon we'll start watching some clips. But right now, I'm gonna set y'all up with some. Start around 10 o'clock. We get a couple joiners.
what 92 hair washes can do in 6 months. Not 10 washes, not 30 washes.
Oh my gosh, you always hit the perfect spot.
Of course. I never meant to.
It's been a insane week. This has been essentially nonstop killer information of the most extreme forms. Something that I think a lot of people are having a hard time dealing with this. Even myself, I've studied this for 20 plus years, and going into this information all the way back to the early 2000s, I think even this is hard to process. Even minute by minute, we're seeing the most just ridiculous, demonic, unfathomable, unspeakable horrors straight out of Hellraiser, like Alex said. It's hard to process, but what I want to do is we will talk about some of these more recent leaks, recent emails, recent digs and finds that people have come up with. But I want to zoom out a little bit and give you kind of another big picture scope to understand exactly the layout, what this operation is, apparently what it was, and how that's how the world was set up by these sort of Bond villains to be a catch-22 where you can never really get up in this system without being compromised. In fact, there was a very controversial book written many years ago called Cannibalism, Blood Drinking, and High Adept Satanism by a guy named Kurt Barker, who alleged that he was brought up in this kind of a scenario. And a lot of times the victims, and I'm not trying to knock the victims, but sometimes they have very difficult to corroborate stories. But in some cases, the stories do end up corroborated. Obviously, elements of Kathy O'Brien's story seem very well corroborated. Elements also then of Kurt Barker's story also. He wrote a book, as I said, that was really kind of out there. It seemed a little mush for most people back in 2013 or 14. But what he described is the exact sort of model of what the whole Epstein network consulting organized crime operation appears to have meant, including things that we wouldn't even fathom as part of today's polite society, or even the wicked. We wouldn't even think about them doing the types of things that ancient Babylonian religion did, right? Human sacrifice, the partaking of the flesh of human beings, etc. It seems just not part of reality. It seems like something out of a story or something in the past, the distant ancient empires or something like that. But the thing is that sludge, that dark occult religion continued from the ancient world even up to today. In fact, even in the Old Testament, the Israelites were not immune to this. In fact, they fell into this very practice in many, many centuries. And according to the book of Deuteronomy, that's in many cases why they end up chastised and losing their nation state. For example, in the story of the Babylonian captivity, Jeremiah records that this is because the Jews were falling into the temptation to sacrifice their children at the Valley of Hinnom, which was a place where they would burn their children in effigy. We know the Israelites fell into the worship of Baal Peor, which involved bizarre sex rites and menstrual fluids, bodily fluids, etc., all those kinds of things. And that didn't go away, right? Ezekiel, for example, talked about, given a vision where he said that he saw the high priest having a secret room sort of underneath, behind the wall in the temple, perhaps tunnels, and occult practices and demonic practices. And this religion that was secret had a cloaked cover of public, normal worship of God that kept it kind of a Gnostic inner secret circle. That religion didn't go away. It sort of passed into today through secret societies and cults throughout the ancient world in the Middle Ages that were suppressed through Christian laws.
Yep.
In the Middle Ages, Christian laws tended to keep
Through Christianity.
perfect societies, but they...
That's the thing, man. Christianity, man. I ain't gonna say too much. I grew up a Christian. I still consider myself a Christian at times, but when you do your research, man, it's a lot of things that don't sit right with me.
At least made a lot of these practices illegal, made them unnecessary, or made them basically liable to criminal penalties, and even to the point of death in some cases if you're engaged in witchcraft and these kinds of things. And that's because they may not have been widespread, but they did exist. So it was necessary to have even the state involved in suppressing these kinds of activities. If you study the medieval heresies, they bizarre satanic practices, they also had the possibility of becoming a political revolutionary force. That's exactly what happened with communist and socialist movements like Joachim of Fior. He was a proto-socialist, or Thomas Müntzer of the Müntzer Rebellion. He was a proto-socialist who influenced many Jacobins and French revolutionary socialists. So when we get up into the modern period, though, what nobody would seem to would think to connect is the idea of bankers, intelligence, and cults. Those domains just seem totally foreign. They seem like what would those three things have to do with one another? Well, if we get into the history of the Rothschilds as a family, in their biography, they brag within the first 50 pages that they were able to successfully game the stock market after the Waterloo Agreement, and by doing that, they could buy up the stocks for pennies on the dollar when the market crashed, based on advanced intelligence. So they understood hundreds of years ago that banking is essentially intelligence work. We don't think about it that way. We think of banking as boring dudes, doing ledgers and graphs or something, and usury and loans, and certainly that's all part of it. But the real scheme here that allowed certain banking families to rise to prominence, particularly when the original Rothschild sent out his sons throughout Europe to set up banking empires, it wasn't just to have a business. It was to set up an empire that also had private intelligence, that had private networks of spies and blackmail. Those things always go together. Usury, sodomy, blackmail, those things are always connected because they go together when it comes to ruling a society by debasing them, degrading them, and getting them to be controlled via their base passions. That's why those things always go together, and that includes the idea of democracy. Even ancient philosophers understood that democracy was a way to control the masses by very cunning oligarchs who could convince the population that lowest common denominator, appealing to the basest desires of the most, and thus debasing the society more and more, allowed the oligarchical elite to have more and more control. And that's not just Jewish, it's also in the domain of Plato. Plato talks about this. That's his critique of democracy. But the same idea passes into other secret societies and networks that have a revolutionary ethos. And of course, this is part of Talmudic religion. Talmudic religion does believe in an in-group, out-group situation where there's a preference for the in-group and a desire to have a separate morality for the out-group versus the in-group. So you can engage in trickery, deception, lying, etc. to those in the out-group, and you prefer and give the benefits to those on the in-group. Many groups do this, so it's a common pattern. I'm not saying that's only the Talmudic approach, but it is a Talmudic approach. That's very obviously there. We have many rabbis now clipped all over everywhere admitting all this. They say this openly. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we find in the domain of intelligence and banking in that history of Europe, the Rothschilds come to prominence. They become the most powerful banking dynasty, particularly in the 1800s, around 1800s, even to the point in the 1830s where they're giving loans to the papacy. They become the official papal bankers in 1832. And after that, they subsequently loan many, many sizable portions to the papacy, probably to get it entwined. chapter deals with the movie Eyes Wide Shut and the close relationship that it bears to reality in terms of masked balls. I'm not talking about testicles, but the masked ball that you find in Rothschild mansions, and now with the surrealist art that you see in the Rothschild masked balls from the 1960s and 70s, these very famous pictures, we're getting to see that this notion of cannibalizing and degrading and debasing people, compromising these people, this has been in the films, it's been in movies for decades. Our eyes were wide shut to actually understand what the movies were about and what we were being told. And lo and behold, now it's all out there. Every single element of this that was, a really controversial topic to discuss: child trafficking, ritual abuse, absolutely unspeakable things with toddlers. I mean, it's all there, and it's all real. So we've got to come to grips with that. We got to understand that. But I really want to impress upon everyone that it's not new. This is something that's been going on for a long time. A lot of that stuff in the prior to modern technology and the information age, it was more suppressed, lesser known. But it's all, again, an ancient practice. It's all very real. And if we think about, say again, the Rothschild banking system, this was a network set up all throughout Europe, but also in the U.S. People don't understand that. They think that the Rothschilds were really in Europe, and then the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan, et cetera, Vanderbilts, and those families were prominent in the U.S. And that's certainly true. But a lot of research has been done by historians to make the case that J.P. Morgan was actually a Rothschild front, and that's not far-fetched, given the fact that official biographers of Cecil Rhodes make the point that the De Beers operation and Cecil Rhodes going down to Canal was a Rothschild operation. Benjamin Disraeli was a Rothschild front, according to his own and Quigley's estimation. So we're noticing a pattern here of, you had Lord Jacob Rothschild there with Marina Abramovich standing in front of Lucifer. You've got the surrealist art going on here with these characters. There is always a sort of a preference, too, by the way, for weird, surrealist, satanic art, postmodern art. And you see that also in characters like Man Ray. And you'll notice, I was on my YouTube channel, we did a live stream going through the reconstruction of Epstein's New York mansion and looking at all the artwork. And of course, we can't read a whole lot necessarily into artwork per se, but definitely you can find people's interests and proclivities to some degree through the artwork. And when we look at the artwork, what we find is a lot of satanic imagery, a lot of occult imagery, a lot of human sacrifice imagery. In fact, Epstein was involved in procuring a painting that was the sacrificing of infants. And a lot of the artwork that Epstein has in his mansion includes things that are surrealist, including severed women's torsos. And why do I make a connection there with the art and the symbology there? Well, Man Ray was the surrealist artist that was very popular back in the 30s and 40s, who was believed to be associated with the circles of the Black Dahlia case. And that was Elizabeth Short, the first ritual murder case that was known in Hollywood, where they found her dismembered body laying on the side of the road. And the body was sort of, the torso and things were posed in sort of artistic style poses. And the reason that's relevant here is that there were very similar styles of surrealist torso severed art that Epstein had throughout his mansion, including a lot of what appeared to be sort of underage looking things, very just bizarre, surrealist, and satanic looking artwork everywhere in the estate. Not surprising. We saw the same thing with the Podestas and the just bizarre, gross stuff that they were into, including a body reported in the Washington Post that was appeared to be bent back in the abnormal pose that Jeffrey Dahmer supposedly put some of his bodies into. Total Hannibal Lecter stuff, by the way. And if you've never seen the show Hannibal, I'm not necessarily recommending it, but it just happened to be that my wife and I were watching the 3 seasons of Hannibal, and it's a very gruesome show. I don't know if I can necessarily tell you to go watch it because it's hard to watch at points. But as we're watching Hannibal, I'm like, this is the Epstein stuff. This is fiction, but this is reality. It's like literally the same stuff. And weird thing with Hannibal, in the show, he's actually a sort of mind control handler. He's mind controlling different traumatized individuals as a psychiatrist. and manipulating them into also becoming serial killers and sort of being his mind-controlled slaves to do everything you could think of. So again, fiction a long time ago. I think that show came out in 2014 with Mads Mikkelsen and Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, fiction is telling us in many cases what's really going on, just like Eyes Wide Shut, just like The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp. And speaking of The Ninth Gate, fascinating to see that Roman Polanski's lawyers were going to meet with Epstein. So Epstein was trying to get some of the same networks that, again, tie into wild PDF cases. And if you don't know, Roman Polanski is the famous director that had to flee to France because of the situation with an underage girl back at the time of the Manson murders. Keep in mind, too, I think InfoWars put up my little mini documentary video that I did on the movie Eye of the Devil, one of the few movies that Sharon Tate was actually in. Again, a really wild situation of perhaps coincidence, but also perhaps intentional occult murder. Sharon Tate, who died in the Manson murders, was pregnant with Polanski's child. She played multiple roles as a witch. She was in a film with Alex Sanders, the famous witch, consulting on it, and that's where she was inducted into witchcraft. I put that in my third book. And then she went on to do a film called Eye of the Devil, where Donald Pleasance plays a satanic priest who has a cover or a front for a large, famous village run by a French prominent family, aka it seems like the Rothschilds here. And he's a Catholic priest who pretends to be a Catholic, but the village and the family are Satanists. They practice human sacrifice. And the craziest part, again, is that in the film, Sharon Tate becomes a willing human sacrifice. And this is not too long before she actually, presumably, seemingly is sacrificed. Yeah, you're showing the film. I think that's a clip from Leonardo DiCaprio in Tarantino's last film about the Manson murders. And again, interesting tie-in, because that film also kind of gives an alternate version, or a questioning perhaps version of what happened in the Manson murders. And again, we know that there were satanic connections to the Manson murders because of Squeaky Fromm, I think, and others were involved in the networks that Anton LaVey had set up. But I think with Manson, you definitely have some kind of mind control CIA operation going on there, tying into organized crime. A lot of people believe that there were also compromised tapes that a lot of celebrities were involved in that perhaps were the basis.
If you support Trump as president, you need to listen to this. We're asking America First Patriots one simple question, and this is going viral. Visit the next page.
In part for the...
Yeah, the thing about these niggas, man, it's always gonna be a give and take, or vice versa. You take some, you gotta give. We give you some, we gotta take. It's always that way with these dudes, man. And it's crazy how people just, as we grew up, well, not me, because I always had discernment, but everybody wanted to be famous. Everybody wanted to be on TV, BET, VH1. But it's like, when you look at it, I don't even think any of these motherfuckers had what they was even showing us. You feel me? They was selling us a dream from the start. They was selling us a motherfucking dream from the start. That's all I really gotta say about that. But we gonna keep watching this shit, man.
The murders that Manson engineered. But to go back to Epstein, again, we have Epstein in the domain of Hollywood, Epstein in the domain of culture. We saw fascinating insights that Epstein wanted to be involved even in video games. He wanted to look into things like Call of Duty and how to get, I don't exactly understand it because I didn't play Call of Duty. I played a little bit, but basically getting people to engage in microtransactions within Call of Duty so that you get addicted to spending money and not saving money. Right? So just really wild ideas of gamification and tokenization of everything. Perhaps the casino gulag, like Max Kaiser has talked about for so long. That's something that Epstein seemed to be interested in. Thus also his interest in crypto and trying to put money into a lot of different early crypto ventures, experimenting with, but he would spread his money kind of everywhere. He would put money into transhumanist things, cloning, genetic engineering, and of course we had the the top email come out today that everybody's talking about, which is one of the nobility of Europe saying to Epstein, look, we're going to be very close to having genetically engineered children, and we won't even need wombs anymore. So here's Epstein fully involved in the transhumanist movement, fully involved in what Aldous Huxley wrote about 100 years ago in Brave New World, saying that we won't need wombs anymore because we'll have basically test tube babies. This was a plan, something that they engineered, and he's fully on board with the Fabian socialist technocratic agenda, as I've been saying, and that's not antithetical to the Zionist or rabbinic agenda either. Those things can absolutely go together because it's the same attitude. The earliest founders of the Zionist state were all socialists. You have people like Moses Hess, the father of utopian socialism. Chaim Weizmann, Theodor Herzl, these are, non-believing or a quasi-atheist, pantheist socialists. And they believe that the nation-state of Israel would be the future salvation of the world once Israel became the dominant power in the world. And to get to that stage, again, I think we've seen that they have no qualms, no morals, no compunction to get to that. It's absolutely just unspeakable stuff that we're talking about here. And if you doubt that, well, think about, say, organized crime, because really the best way to understand the Epstein operation is to have a good understanding of the mafia and organized crime. One of the first fourth hour talks that we did here on the Alex Jones Show 6 years ago was on the history of organized crime in America and how that's the pattern for understanding the Illuminati or Jewish crime, Jewish networks, any of these, David Rockefeller as well. It's not just a Jewish, it's all of these entities in criminal syndicates tend to work together. To understand that, it helps to understand organized crime. And we think about it as the Sicilian mafia, but people don't know, and I've interviewed some of the top living mafia people out there, like Sammy Bull Gravano. People don't know that the Sicilian mafia was organized by the Jewish mafia. Did you know that Lucky Luciano went and consulted with Meyer Lansky about how to network the Sicilian mafia in the United States, how to set it up and structure it? He got a lot of that idea and information and bookkeeping from, you got it, Meyer Lansky, the famous Jewish gangster. And I found an interview that was on YouTube. It's pretty amusing. It's only about 5 minutes. You can go watch it. It's an interview when Meyer Lansky, he fled to Israel, shocker, and he was in Israel, and he said that the world press was oppressing him and attacking him, and it was all unfair. And the journalist was asking him, are you an organized crime figure? And he says, I don't know nothing about organized crime. What's this? What's the mafia? I don't even know what that is. Never heard of it. Funny because the J. Edgar Hoover in the famous congressional hearings said the exact same thing. They said, is there a Cosa Nostra? I have not, no, have I ever known nor heard of, nor is there any such thing as Cosa Nostra. What is that? What is this? We don't know. So the government lied, the mafia lied, they all lied. And are we surprised that the government is still lying and covering up these things, a.k.a. the absurdity of Pam Bondi saying, look at the Dow. Who cares about gigantic satanic networks of criminals raping children? We have high stocks. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. This is the fourth hour. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer of jaysanalysis.com. I want to remind you, if you want a deeper dive, I've done every single day almost this week, multiple hour live streams on every one of these really insane next level email dumps. So we've got about 20 plus hours this week or more, maybe 30 hours now of live stream material on the channel, going through one by one each day as new information came out. So as we were discussing, we were getting into transhumanism, we're getting into cloning, the Zorro Ranch, which really seems to have been covered up. The Zorro Ranch stuff is pretty wild. If you think about it, you wouldn't want to assume that a organized crime figure would be into transhumanism. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Sammy the Bull Gravano, for example, longtime organized crime figure, he's not really into cloning and becoming HAL 9000. But when we look at the character Jeffrey Epstein, the reason for this is what Alex keeps playing, what I honed in on right away. We did a live stream of the entire Bannon interview. We went piece by piece, picking out all the relevant details with Bannon and Epstein in that older interview. And the most important part was at the beginning when he said, I was 30 and I was brought into the Trilateral Commission. That's a high-level steering committee that was created originally by Kissinger under Rockefeller for Zbigniew Brzezinski. So they recruited Brzezinski. And the reason for that was because Kissinger said, I read his Between Two Ages about the technocratic era that's coming. And I want to set up a special steering committee from the CFR members for this guy. And that's the origin in the 1970s of the Trilateral Commission. So something akin to Bilderberg, something akin to the CFR, another one of these high-level, non-governmental, but somehow also governmental steering committees like Bilderberg, right, that is involved in world policy. And it's not accidental that he says, the reason I was recruited into that is because I understood fractional reserve banking. That is the ability to loan out more money than you have in the reserves. Within the first few hundred pages of Tragedy and Hope, Carol Quigley says that for hundreds of years, this Rothschild banking system and network used this trick to take over Europe, to take over the Western world. They would lend out more than they had at reserve through the gold note system, and then they would charge usury and interest on those loans, and then buy up real assets and gold for centuries, back when there was a gold standard. That system is a giant layered onion layer of scams within scams, right? And Epstein seemed to be very proficient at that. If anything, he was a high level, I would say a PhD in criminal operations consultant. That seems to be his real skill set. He wasn't at the top of the pyramid, but he was pretty high up. He seemed to have people in some emails perhaps telling him what to do. But in other emails, it's kind of like you're kind of surprised, like things that they don't know. For example, the Ehud Barak conversation that Mike Benz and many people covered, that whole audio exchange was fascinating because here you have a high-level organized crime figure explaining to Ehud Barak, Prime Minister of Israel, former Prime Minister of Israel and intelligence operative, explaining what Silicon Valley is all about, who Peter Thiel is, and what Palantir is. It's a fascinating conversation where they're trying to understand and spell the word. So they had a hard time with Palantir. But at the same time, I mean, no regard for grammar, is the worst grammar you've ever seen in all these emails. I've spent a whole 10 days or 11 days now in these emails. It's like sometimes the grammar is so bad you don't even know what they're talking about. It's like, is this code or is this just crappy spelling? But thousands of emails about really suspicious, hundreds, I should say, perhaps hundreds of emails about really suspicious terminology, code words. We've covered all that this week, so I won't rehearse all that. But again, to go back to banking and transhumanism, this is the really key component that Epstein seemed to have had an understanding of fractional reserve banking that he could explain to people at a very high level. And that was one of the reasons why he was put into the Trilateral Commission. But you don't get there unless you've already had some degree of.
Watch what happens when a 50-year-old man blocks DHT naturally for just 90 days. Day 1, nothing visible yet. Just another middle-aged guy staring at his disappearing hairline. Day 30, baby hairs start of
OSS CIA recruiting, and that's what we have with the Dalton School, Bill Barr, and then early spotting, and that's also connected directly, I think, to the Maxwell Ghislaine operation and the Rothschilds. Again, we know that Maxwell himself was actually another Rothschild representative. He was taught by Rothschild, represented their empire in the art of corporate takeovers. That's a thing that Maxwell specialized in. And so when Epstein was at Bear Stearns, there's a insider trading scandal. Epstein doesn't get in trouble, but his partner does. This seems to lead to the recruitment and advancement of Jeffrey Epstein into these other higher steering, higher level committees. This vindicates everything that people like us in the conspiracy world, Alex and others, it's not even conspiracy. It's just real geopolitics. It's real on the world or on the ground, real world operations and networks. That's how they work. They work like a mafia. You have to understand organized crime to understand that these people are no different than the Sicilian mafia. They're just at a higher level. So things like the Bilderberg Group or things like the Trilateral Commission, they operate like organized crime syndicates. Exactly. The structure, the methods, the techniques, the dork arts that they use, whether it's blackmail, compromise, assassinations, it's the same stuff. It's literally just like Spectre. If you think about the James Bond film recently with Daniel Craig, I think it was about 2015, the one called Spectre, where Bond is facing off against Blofeld, and it's Christoph Waltz that plays Blofeld in that episode. If you recall, there's this excellent scene where he infiltrates a Bilderberg-style meeting, and you get the impression this really is kind of Bilderberg. And you have all these organized crime figures sitting around a giant table in Rome. It looks like the Club of Rome type of meeting. And, Blofeld is sitting there all darked out. You can't really see him. And they're listing off their crime stats like business. They're like, sir, we've had an upwards tick 40% in human trafficking this year. And somebody else said, we've had 4,000, money laundering cases that have benefited us by $14 billion. So it's like they're listing off crime stats like a business meeting, but it's organized crime. And that's what organized crime is a business, right? That is a business. This is a international high-tier business. And if you understand it that way, that's what Epstein is. He's a high-level consultant, multiple links to intelligence, believed he was thus untouchable. Because he was in that untouchable intelligence protected role, I think that's why he didn't worry too much about how he spoke in the emails. For some of the most extreme stuff, it does seem like they're obviously using code, right? Jerky, the grape soda, pizza, whatever, other code words are being used. But in some cases, they seem to be so brazen, they don't even use the code. In the case of the really horrendous situation with the girl that was calling out to Jesus that they were joking about torturing and wanting to dress up like Jesus to further traumatize her. The sulfuric acid being ordered in large quantities, presumably to also get rid of bodies. Multiple email references to and messages referencing tunnels at most of the properties. So not just the island, but other properties also. He seemed to be wanting to have networks. What does that remind you of? Well, remember when Ted Gunderson was investigating the McMartin preschool case, everybody made fun of people in the conspiracy world and Gunderson himself for talking about tunnels. Well, lo and behold, when the FBI declassified the McMartin case, they had documents admitting, yes, we did find tunnels. And yet the media covered that up and made fun of anybody talking about this stuff, just like Stephen Colbert covered a lot of these things up, made fun of anybody talking about international pedophile rings, international cult rings. That's all been mocked by all of these mainstream people to cover up for these people because they're all tied into and work for these people. Now, I don't know necessarily if every single person like a Colbert or whoever, I don't have any information that they did anything per se, but they don't have to because they're paid shills and propagandists to cover up for this establishment network that is destroying the West. And they do that by design. That's the key point here. This network, this window shows us the thing that legitimate researchers, legitimate conspiracy theorists, who are really just espionage theorists, geopolitical analysts, what we've been talking about for so many decades now, multiple decades, in the case of myself, Alex, and others. Alex, obviously more than me, longer than me, but I learned all this from Alex, and he was right. The stuff he was saying over all these years was 100% spot on. So Alex has been vindicated. I've been vindicated. But unfortunately, we're vindicated about something that's horrendous. So it's a bittersweet situation. But how do we fix this? What do we do about it? We got to understand what this is. We still don't have enough people understanding this. A lot of boomers, for example, are out there saying, it's time for the country to move on. Just repeating what the talking points have told them to repeat. Fox News is not even aware of this. The only thing that matters is a woman being supposedly kidnapped. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I don't know. I haven't even followed it because what does that compare to this? This is the biggest story of our lifetime. And amazingly, the algorithms have basically created multiple realities for different people. So if you're a boomer, this isn't even a reality to you. The algorithm is giving you a totally different reality that some other boomer was kidnapped or something, and there's a letter, ransom note. I don't even know, but like, what does that compare? And that's terrible if that happened to that woman. But how does that compare to the entire Western world being subverted by a criminal cult network? I mean, it doesn't compare. Because this is why we have the wars. This is why we have the false flags. Ghislaine Maxwell being invited to a shadow 9/11 commission. What the hell is even that? To quote the meme. What is it? We don't even know what that is. What is that? A shadow 9/11 commission? Epstein is in Ukraine a month before Zelensky, and then Zelensky is asking in text messages for Epstein's consultation on how to run stuff and overthrow Putin. I mean, this guy's involved in everything. There's emails where he's over here talking to Peter Thiel about overthrowing Middle Eastern countries, and this is how you profit from it. Rothschild's emailing him saying, we're going to buy up Ukraine. We're going to profit from it. The Greek debt crisis, the bailouts. How do we profit from that? How do we buy it up? Greek fire sale, like Max Kaiser talked about. It's all been vindicated. From all the way back to the original insider trading problems and scandals that he was connected to at Bear Stearns, that his buddy went to prison for. 2008 housing collapse. He tells Bannon that he's in the prison making phone calls to the executives. I mean, if you've watched Goodfellas, if you remember, Paulie is in jail cooking meatballs and he's running the family operation. Epstein's like in his jumpsuit doing his daily phone call to the Lehman Brothers, CEO or whatever. It's like, this is crazy. This is how the world really works. Yes, it is. So without understanding that it's not the politicians typically that run the show, it's the steering committee members, the shadow government. This is the shadow government that we're talking about. It's a breakaway national security apparatus that's a lot of corporate private individuals and bankers, not James Bonds out there assassinating people. That's a lower level thing. The real power structure is bankers, corporate people, and modern intelligence agencies come out of banking. Now, if you go back to like early World War I or prior to that, there were banking intelligence operatives in terms of Rothschild. But when we think about intelligence, that used to be that was thought of as a military thing, right? It's the military that does intelligence. The difference here is that this is privatized, private intelligence, and that's much more cunning and much more effective for what we're talking about in terms of subverting and taking over in a shadow government than it is to have a public military intelligence kind of thing, right? A wartime military operation. This is a perpetual private banking created intelligence operation. And that's exactly what.
You're not going to believe what this shampoo does to your hair. I've seen men.
The intelligence agencies come out of. They come out of bankers and Wall Street. This is a book written by a Council on Foreign Relations member that we're working through on my channel called The Old Boys. And it's writing about and talking about these older networks, just like the Rothschild networks, where you have bankers setting up intelligence agencies. In the case of the OSS, Rockefeller's had a huge influence on that. And British intelligence came and set it up. Eventually, there's an alliance between the Zionists and the WASPs. It's called the WASP-Zionist Alliance. So when Quigley was writing, AIPAC, for example, didn't have as much influence as it has now. So it's not that he was ignoring that domain or that element of the power structure. They had not achieved that much power in the 1960s when he wrote Tragedy and Hope. But there is the implication that steering committees, NGOs, think tanks, foundations, and intelligence agencies, they all have a much greater role in running the country and setting policy, especially at the tip top is the Federal Reserve and the private banks there, and the Bank for National Settlements, which is the international private bank of private banks. Those have a lot more power and influence than the government and the public officials. Now, it's not that the public officials and the civil servant people don't have any influence. Rather, they have a much lesser influence and impact than the people on those steering committees, the people that have the ability to assassinate, to blackmail, to compromise. And this is not anything new. If we think about Epstein, it bears the exact same structure and pattern to so many similar cult, sex op, blackmail operations that we have seen over the years. In fact, I think I tried to list many of these, and I obviously I forgot some of them because there's so many. But we have Jimmy Savile, the elite UK procurer, the disgraced BBC radio shock jock guy, very close to the royals, given a papal knighthood, very close to John Paul II, as apparently Jeffrey Epstein was in several emails. By the way, people are trying to debunk this and decry this. Gordon Thomas's book, Gideon Spies on the Mossad, that came out in 1999, a lot of the claims and information that this mainline historical journalist researcher did in 1999, many of those claims have now been vindicated. Nobody else is talking about Gordon Thomas's book. It's been vindicated now via these Epstein revelations. He wrote that Mossad history in 1999. Talked about Mossad having a relationship and a role with Princess Diana. Well, lo and behold, turns out Epstein himself hung out with and met Princess Diana. There's speculation in some articles that he might have even tried to pair up with Princess Di. We don't know. But we do know that he had a specifically secret, hidden, framed article about Princess Di and the divorce. So presumably he believes he had some role in that. And there were articles coming out at the time that he might have had a relationship or wanted to have a relationship with her. So we have Savile, we have the Franklin cover-up, right? The Franklin cover-up implicated a lot of high-level GOP lobbyists, people like Craig Spence. They had a estate wired in D.C. where young call boys, right, were being filmed with political people to blackmail them. And the Franklin cover also connected to Larry King in Nebraska and high-level satanic ritual abuse on record. So you can check out Nick Bryant's book on the Franklin cover-up. I've interviewed him as well. The Finders case, again, human trafficking, weird cults, sexual abuse, and presumably selling children on an international market. And that involved the CIA or members of the CIA covering up and protecting the Finders case. We have Elm Guest House situation where in the UK, British intelligence has a guest house, aka a house of ill repute for floozies of the evening, to implicate, and not just floozies, also male prostitutes, to implicate and honey trap high-level British politicians, many of whom have, of course, been exposed over the years as famous PDFs and even worse. Cyril Smith, Lord Mountbatten, a lot of those characters were into the worst imaginable stuff that you could think of. And Elm Guest House was part of this scandal because people were being compromised there. And who was there behind that? Well, it appears British intelligence had wired this guest house to entrap high-level people. We have the King Cora scandal in Ireland, another situation where you have ritual sexual abuse. We have the Nexium cult with the Bronfmans being involved on record. The court case shows that with funding this Hollywood-connected sex cult through Keith Raniere, and that included a lot of famous people, a lot of even, I think one of the heads of state in Mexico was directly involved in the Nexium situation with Keith Raniere and his cult. We have the many Vatican ritual abuse cases, and I don't think it's accidental that not only does Epstein have a time where he went to the Vatican with Ghislaine and, according to several emails, got architectural oddities from John Paul II that he put in his house, as well as planning trips for Pope Francis. So there seems to be a definite connection there, which, again, lines up with what Gordon Thomas says in his book about Gideon spies, that all the way back in the 1970s and 80s, Mossad was very interested in establishing some kind of bugging relationship to bug the Vatican, no surprise there, but also setting up a relationship with John Paul II. And they appear to have been somewhat successful with that because it's under John Paul II that the Vatican eventually recognizes the nation state of Israel. So you can look at Gordon Thomas's information on that because it was the Mossad that really organized that and helped get that going. So why would it be surprising that Jeffrey Epstein, thus having a CIA, British intelligence, and Mossad role, why would it be surprising that it has a close relationship to John Paul II? I mean, he's on the Trilateral Commission Steering Committee when he's 30. Of course, he's going to have connections to high-level prelates. And when he describes the inner workings of the Vatican Bank, well, that's another indicator that he understands the inner workings of the Vatican. He even says Benedict XVI stepping down. This is Epstein explaining this to another banking economics guy, Larry Summers. You would think Larry Summers would know this, but Epstein is the one explaining to Larry Summers how the Vatican Bank works. Why does Epstein know the inner workings of the Vatican Bank? Well, it's obviously because he's an intelligence agent type person, fixer, consultant, but also because he understands organized crime. This proves Gladio. So Epstein has the same attitude that I've explained about the Vatican Bank and Operation Gladio as one example of an entire country being compromised according to Paul Williams' book on it, who's an FBI consultant, through Kissinger. Kissinger set up the structure of Gladio to compromise basically all of the prelates and the politicians to basically run Italy. And they did that to ensure that Italy would not go socialist or communist during the Cold War. Now, I'm not pro-socialist or communist, but the way that, according to Paul Williams and the Gladio revelations in the 1990s, 80s and 90s, the way that Italy was compromised was through bunga bunga parties, orgies. And if it's Vatican prelates going to orgies, I doubt that it's women. I think we all know what that would have involved. And again, who's running that? Licio Gelli, Michele Sindona, right? Licio Gelli being the highest Grand Orient Lodge Mason, the P2 Lodge. This is all public on record, by the way. This isn't even conspiracy. This is public. And Michele Sindona, who was the mafia syndicate guy. So you have a Mason, a mafia guy, and according to Paul Williams' research, Kissinger is the one calling those shots. So Kissinger would tell Sindona and Licio Gelli what to do. They would then tell the prelates and the Italian government what to do. And Epstein says, basically, I learned about the Vatican Bank then, and that this inner working is the most secretive bank, along with like the BIS, the Bank for National Settlements, that's perfect for laundering money and doing these operations. Now, why would that be surprising? I mean, John Paul II established this close relationship with not just the Mossad and the nation state of Israel, but presumably it appears now also Epstein himself. So again, it's all there in books that nobody reads. People don't read anymore, so they don't know what Gordon Thomas wrote back in 1999 about this relationship.
Watch what happens when a 50-year-old man walks DHT naturally for just 90 days. Day 1, nothing.
We have the Diddy case, right? Diddy is apparently a smaller, lower level type of thing, but the same pattern as the type of thing apparently that with Diddy that we know Epstein was doing. We have the Peter Nygaard situation, right? Nygaard is involved in obtaining stem cells, paying for stem cells, wanting to get the blood of the youth and, you know, sort of ambrosia, like Alex talked about. That seems to be what Nygaard is into, and presumably also with Zorro Ranch. Now it appears that's what Epstein was up to as well. You want to have this other operation with baby farming. John of God, exact same thing with John of God that appears Epstein wants to do with Zorro Ranch. We have the Dutroux case, right? The Dutroux affair, all the way up to the highest levels of the Belgian elite, including prelates of the Catholic Church, including government officials involved and implicated in raping women in castles, putting them in cages, all the worst stuff that you can imagine. And who gets in trouble? The one that's the low-level procurer. So who takes the fall? Well, Savile, Epstein, Dutroux, these are the people that take the fall. And on and on and on. The Presidio case with Michael Aquino, right? All of these infamous cases bear the same patterns and structures of organized crime level stuff. It's just that Epstein is at an international Blofeld Bond villain level operation. Get my book, Esoteric Hollywood, at jaysanalysis.com in the shop.
He didn't think this shampoo would work. Men lose hair, especially after 35, so we made a shampoo that stops it. Guys,
what's going to happen in the next probably few weeks is that the industries in the world are going to look at this. So,
do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question.
I'm sorry.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Well, see, first of all, it's normal when you go to the Old Testament, Moloch and the Baals, they wanted to be the children. Explained to me by Satanists because it's a higher level of blasphemy to God, against God. It's and for some reason the demons love bringing that kind of harm. We look at a child and automatically we're going to protect them, save them, guard them, whatever it takes. They look at a child, they alive, they torture it. Got to remember that's their nature. And so if they could show more of their nature to a defenseless child, they love that. That's why some rituals are called demon revels or satanic revels. The younger the child, here's exactly what dark undergrounders have said to me in rituals. The younger, the better. Think in terms of rats and garbage. Smelly old garbage draws the rats. A ritual with all that torture, with all that pain, ultimately prescribed by the demons in the first place, it draws them. And once they begin to open the blood gate, that's what they attach to in the context ritual. Then when a child or a human is, that's when the demons are released to the practitioners. So it's all about their unsatiable hatred of God. Anything they can do to harm humanity, harm innocence as an attack on God in a sense. There's no question in their nature, they don't shed a tear. They don't have any mercy. So they'll harm, and they love that as part of the entrance to come into the site.
The name that Jeffrey Epstein gave to his bank account, it's none other than Baal, the pagan god in the Old Testament that's often associated with Satan himself, that the Israelites and others sacrificed their firstborn children to. So this was a demon that babies were sacrificed to. And Epstein names his bank account by the name of this demon. Here's a memorandum from Jeffrey Epstein to JP Morgan. Please wire $11,438 from the above account to Baal, name, Wachovia Bank. Now this demon and the sacrifices of children made to this demon are described in the Old Testament in the book of Jeremiah. The things that we do know Jeffrey Epstein did are just as horrible as what the Israelites did in the Old Testament in sacrificing their firstborn to Baal. So no matter how this shakes down with the situation with the bank account, Jeffrey Epstein, what he and his clients did was horribly wrong and needs to be condemned.
As you probably heard, the latest Epstein files are absolutely disgusting. World leaders are exposed. Former presidents are exposed. Everyone who you would consider an elite has been exposed in these files. And when you even look at the specific documents and read what it entails, it's disgusting. Matter of fact, it's past disgusting, it's straight up demonic. All of it is centered behind little children being taken advantage of, abused, and even worse. I don't even want to get into the details that are in these files. And what's crazy is, even though these files are released, nothing's gonna happen. These people won't get locked up. Why? Because they're the rulers of this world. And the Bible has talked about this in Ephesians 6:12, where it says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." That describes this world to a T. The rulers of this world, the elites, they're demonic.
For years, there has been a long-standing conspiracy theory that Hollywood and the elites harvest the blood of young people and transfuse it in order to reverse age. And now the Epstein files might have revealed that that is in fact true. In this email to Jeffrey Epstein, it says, all you need is a blood transfusion from the pack and you reverse aging. This is where adrenochrome comes into play. It is a real chemical compound found in the blood when the body is in a fight or flight situation. And we know that the kids that were involved in Jeffrey Epstein's network were definitely put into fight or flight. And of course, we've seen Hollywood elites like Chrissy Teigen tweet about how they're going to a party where they're serving up 4-year-old cheese pizza with adrenochrome and of course the eye emoji. And according to the FBI code words, cheese stands for little girl and pizza stands for girl. Now back to the email. The subject is Dr. Agus, a professor of medicine and biomedical engineering at USC, pretty local to Hollywood. He is also the founding director and CEO of the Ellison Medical Institute. You know, the medical institute funded by Larry Ellison, the new owner of TikTok. And he's also hosted a Paramount show with big celebs like Ashton Kutcher and Oprah Winfrey. If you know, you know. And I think that Hollywood and the elites have been using predictive programming to get us used to this idea. Take Monsters, Inc., for example, where a bunch of monsters go into little kids' rooms to get them to scream, harvest those screams, and then provide energy for the city of monsters. Except in reality, the monsters are a little less cartoon-like.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's gonna pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of coke one time to a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
Go and rescue those kids.
When God tells you what to do, you cannot hesitate.
Well, there's no other film like this. Our industry can't make this film right now because of a lot of people that are involved in it all over the world that are in this. And many of these people are very famous. We're at that point right now. And if we let our little ones continue to be slaughtered, boy, there's going to be a judgment on this world, and especially our country. The adrenochroming of children, look, where we're at right now, hopefully we need your prayers.
You said a word a minute ago, and I want to clarify what that word was, because you said a word, and I want to make sure that you said adrenochrome.
Yeah.
And a lot of people here, there's about 4,500 people here. There's about 500,000 people streaming online. But you said that word, and by a show of hands, who's heard that word before in this building? Could you please explain, to the extent that you want to or not want to, what that is? Because some people have never heard that before, and we need to discuss that.
Essentially, you have adrenaline in your body. I'll just simplify it. And when you are scared, you produce adrenaline. If you're an athlete, you get in the fourth quarter, you have adrenaline that comes out of you. If a child knows he's going to die, his body will secrete this adrenaline, and they have a lot of terms that they use that he takes me through. It's beyond, and these people that do it, there'll be no mercy for them. And when at that point where I have tears coming out of my eyes because my heart is so on fire, I'm fearless. You're fearless. You're the best that you will ever be when God is in your heart like that. And when it's burning, you're fearless, and you're not afraid of the devil. You actually hunt him. And any of them that hurt our little children in the film, there's a line in there where he says, why are you doing this? And I say to him, as Tim said, because God's children are not for sale. They're not for sale. You can't do it anymore, Satan. And we're coming after you.
It's about time I make Marvel Rivals the most hero-packed shooter ever, but first some hot redhead is trying to blast my ass a few new holes.
All right, you rejects.
Get Tyrannosaurus!
And I'm not afraid, and I'd ask you all not to be afraid either, because they're worth saving.
They're giving you a standing ovation right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay, let's talk about this facial that you're obsessed with. Explain what it is.
Well, it's this way in which one forces through microneedling, pushes a
What are you
serum
pushing into the skin, Sandra?
It is an extraction from a piece of skin that came from a young person far, far away. And they somehow figured out how to extract.
It's foreskin from a Korean baby. That's what it is.
No, okay.
Who comes up with this?
I don't think, and it's not like I'm lying there with little pieces all over my face. It's like, I call it the penis facial. And I think when you see how good it is to your face, you too will run to your local facialist.
Tiny baby Korean.
I'm here going,
Korean.
let it not be a whisker or a peen. Let it, yeah, I'm good here. Okay, we're all good. No, well, so be it.
What is this shit?
That stuff? Adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome?
Don't. Pull all his teeth out. Trace the comb, put you straight behind bars. No, move to the Tropicana right away.
I think there's only one source for this stuff. The adrenaline gland from a living human body.
I know.
What kind of monster client have you hooked up with this time?
Satanism freak.
Where'd you get this?
Never mind, it's absolutely pure. He offered me human blood, said it would take me higher than I'd ever been in my life. Thought he was kidding. So I told him I'd just as soon have an ounce or so of pure adrenochrome. Or maybe just a fresh adrenaline gland to chew on.
So this is one of Oprah's favorites. She says it's a miracle fountain of youth and her magic wrinkle cure. It'll fill in all those lines and wrinkles, and Oprah looks great. So I'm gonna put a little on your hand.
How come it's red?
I'll show you in a sec, Steve. But so it's made from human foreskin.
You tell Oprah this what's on her face?
There were a couple protesters about it because they are cells from baby foreskin.
Oh, baby foreskin.
That makes it better.
Yeah, that's different. I thought it was some grown-ass man.
Your boyfriend have been in a good relationship for quite a moment now.
Yeah.
Years.
Yeah. From baby skin, those lines and wrinkles, and Oprah looks great. So I'm gonna put a little on your hand.
How come it's red?
I'll show you in a sec, Steve. But so it's made from human foreskin.
You tell Oprah this what's on her face?
There were a couple protesters about it because they are cells from baby foreskin.
Oh, baby foreskin.
That makes it better.
Yeah, that's different. I thought it was some grown-ass man.
Boyfriend have been in a good relationship for quite a moment now.
Yeah.
Years.
Yeah, for 7 years.
Now he's an early 30 and you're a late 50.
Yeah.
But somehow you both look the same age there. I mean, you know, there's something to be said for being with a younger man.
I suck baby's blood. And put it on my face.
Controversial new treatment that may hold promise, but at a price.
It does appear to reverse the aging process.
Dr. Jesse Karmazin is talking about transfusions with the young blood from teenagers, and he says it just may turn back the hands of time. That blood is going to patients over 35 as part of a clinical trial called Ambrosia, where subjects paid $8,000 to get the rich growth factors found in the platelets in blood's plasma.
There's pretty much people from most states, people from overseas, from Europe and Australia.
There have not been any published results, but the intriguing concept still found its way into pop culture.
He's my transfusion associate.
Dr. Karmazin says patients who have had it say they feel amazing, and he has seen evidence of reversing the aging process in rats.
Brains are younger hearts. Their hair, if it was gray, just turns dark again.
Dr. Karmazin says that he plans to open a young blood lab in New York in the coming months.
No one can seem to agree on anything anymore except for two things.
Pizza and us.
And us.
I eat children. How old are you?
12.
Oh, okay. Only to 10.
Okay,
that's good.
We are safe.
Yeah. That's good.
Children and pineapple. Children and pineapple. Children and pineapple.
This type of figure exists basically in every country, in every industry, and they're not all as prominent as Epstein. But given Jeffrey Epstein's involvement through the early 2000s Clinton era and everything, given his involvement in everything from Israeli to Saudi to British to French high-level government officials.
One of the weirder things about these files is there's some stuff in there that you go, okay, one thing that we know happens is when something is true, a bunch of stuff gets attached to it that's both not true and also preposterous, that allows you to sort of dismiss all of it together. There's a lot of people thought about that with Pete. And there's some stuff that I saw online that was like George W. Bush was like involved in ritual sacrifice, or things along those lines, like killing babies and eating people and wild shit.
Yeah.
What do you think that stuff is?
I don't know. I don't.
Do you think it really occurs?
What I'll say is, this is a bad week to be a total denialist. You would feel a lot more comfortable about it a week ago than you would this week.
So what did he witness? What did he witness on that yacht that fateful day that these FBI agents are talking about in this internal email? Well, he witnessed, let's just say, they witnessed babies that were being unalived. And pieces of those were removed from them and consumed. Let's just say that, all right? Whether or not this happened, you be the judge. I'm just presenting to you what's in the emails. But it doesn't stop there, because this man, this victim, described it as a ritualistic sacrifice. He even said that his own feet were the scimitar. And guys, here's the crazy part. Again, I'm not saying whether this is true or not. I'm just saying it's simply in the files. This man, he named George H.W. Bush. And we know he was in Skull and Bones, and he's been accused of being let's just say, involved with some pretty shady things.
Barrick just sent Epstein some photos, and Barrick is fully aware of what Epstein is doing. Barrick responds with, "Hope you're good, let's catch up." And Epstein finally says, "Send photos of you and child. Make me smile." The world is ran by people sending Jeffrey Epstein photos of their children.
As home and business owners, we never think damage due to fire, water, sewage, or mold could happen to us. But the reality is that it can. It's distressing to think that your family could become displaced in just minutes.
It is the mark of a villain. Kidnapping children is not what great nations do.
Seems that it wasn't only the trafficking of young girls, as the narrative suggests, but there are code words that suggest Jeffrey Epstein and his associates could maybe even be engaging in some sort of consumption. Is that human consumption? Are there code words? There's a lot of talk of beef jerky. There's a restaurant called The Cannibal where the owner is listed in some of these documents that make you wonder. And I saw more emails about torture, and these coded conversations still have a very clear topic. It was a big driver for them, and these were sick people doing very, very sick things.
People going crazy think they found a code word for human meat? Wait, what? Who sends beef jerky to a lab for analysis? Wait, what? Hope you are feeling better. Did we analyze the jerky? Why didn't we get jerky this week? I also added more to the jerky and ginger lemongrass. Thank you so much, super cool. Beef jerky, delicious. Jojo is here and will walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. We'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. Why would jerky walk around? Why would it do that? Delicious lunch, beef jerky, Steve and I are very grateful above all for your friendship. Some of these emails are so wholesome, aren't they? It's too bad they eat kids. A small insulated bag would be fine. I don't recommend checking it. No need for crazy amounts of ice. One should do. There is one bag of beef jerky in the fridge. Please get it. Also, Blank has more at her place. Please get it from her as well. I suppose it needs to be in a cold, insulated bag. Just wanted to touch base about jerky. J.E. said he was going to start eating regular food again, so he might be eating less jerky. He said he has 6 bags of it in a downstairs freezer. Why would you freeze jerky? Steve needs a 6 to 8 ounce portion of jerky. I gave you all the jerky we had, and it lasted only half the amount of time it was meant to. I felt like it was more important for you to have the jerky to eat during my time off. My plan is to make a batch before I leave for LSJ, and some of that will go to Steve, and the rest will go to you at LSJ when I arrive. Little St. James Island. And that's what LSJ must mean. So logically, that means that they were doing this off of the island. Steve Hansen is sending jerky to your attention overnight. I believe it should be enough to get him through. Jeffrey Epstein is asking to bring him more jerky. I'm flying in on Friday. I will bring jerky. Is there a time I could come say hi and drop off the beef jerky? And that's from Jeffrey Epstein. Francis has time to come tomorrow. Show me how to make it. Jerky class anyone. He will bring you to taste his new jerky recipe from the restaurant. He sends a warm hello. He's working at a restaurant called guys, the restaurant's called Cannibal and Cooks. Wait for it, beef jerky and steak. Can Blank make some jerky? I think we should landscape all around the house to use the water if possible, if the main house is not enough.
Everybody's already reading these, and it's so what's happened is there's an interesting situation now where a lot of people online know this, but none of the shows are covering it. So, and none of the legacy media is covering it. So there's 2 different worlds. People who understand some of the horrors that happen, and others who are kind of clueless about who did it, why they did it, what did they do, how bad was it.
Person who sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein, we don't know who it is, we don't even have their name. They just simply wrote, I am in China, I will be in the US second week of May. To which Jeffrey Epstein responded, where are you? Are you okay? I loved the Twitter video. I think the public deserves to know who sent Jeffrey Epstein a Twitter video. And more importantly, what happened to that person? Where is that person today? Was that person ever investigated?
And now our government tells us, oh no, golly gee, we can't find any of the videos. And then we have legacy media doing nonsensical stories about, oh, we don't know if there were video. Yeah, I mean, sure, every room had a camera, but we don't know that they taped anything. Oh, come on, please. So now people are starting to have a little bit of despair here and significant anger, because they're saying, well, okay, our government obviously doesn't work for us because they knew all of this for decades. And they covered it all up. And it didn't matter who you voted for, they all covered it up. So I don't want to hear any crap about Democrat or Republican on this. All of them are guilty.
That's right.
Everyone that was ever in the executive branch that had any information about this, you all covered it up. And it's super obvious why you covered it up, because it involves intelligence agencies. So the government says, under no condition will we serve the American people. We will serve the monsters who did this. And then our media comes in and goes, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, whatever, shiny objects, squirrels. Okay, go get all the sun. I don't mind that at all. But you're not talking about who organized this. It is obviously a giant organization. They send women all across the globe to some of the most powerful people on earth. And the mainstream media wants us to believe that there was no organization. It was just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell just walking around and shush, shush. No, we're not gonna shush. This is stuff made of like horror. These are horror stories. And so how horrible are the people in charge that they know this happens and they make sure we never find out about it?
But one of the places or one of the islands that Jeff Epstein owned or he was affiliated with was an island called Little St. James. And if you Google this, there was a temple that he had built on Little St. James. And basically the temple was believed to be a temple that was built to Moloch. Now, some of you may be like, who is Moloch? Some of you guys that read your Bible a lot, especially in the Old Testament, you may already know who Moloch is, but it's a lot of times it's chalked up as conspiracy theory or it's made fun of. But Moloch is an actual deity. It's actually in the Bible. And if most people don't read the Bible or don't know that, they don't realize that Moloch is in the Bible, and there's a reason why they believe that some of the things that were going on, especially if it was a temple that was erected for that purpose, for the purpose of worshiping Moloch. And when you look in the Old Testament, before the Israelites had entered Canaan, God warned them not to participate in Moloch worship. And I'm going to read a couple scriptures to you guys. And now listen to this. This is super powerful. Leviticus 18:21 says, "And thou shalt not let any of thy seed," this is God talking, "pass through the fire to Molech." But that's just another name for Moloch. To Molech. "Neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord." Now don't miss that when it said, let any of thy seed, thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech. Leviticus 20:2 says, "Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel." So he says, whether you are a child of Israel or you are a stranger just sojourning in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. This is how serious God was when it came to the worship of Moloch and the passing of the seed through the fire to Moloch. And just to give you a little background on it, the Phoenicians were a loosely gathered group of people who inhabited Canaan. In addition to sexual rituals, watch this, and now think about some of you that have seen some of these videos made on YouTube or hear people talking about these things that some have chalked up to be, they're kooky, that that can't possibly be going on. Listen to what they were doing. It says, in addition to sexual rituals, Moloch worship. So one of the Moloch worships was sexual rituals, and that's the thing that we hear that are believed that a lot of these celebrities, politicians, especially those that were connected to Jeff Epstein, especially at that temple. And, they even have some of Jeff Epstein's flight logs where they said that there were prominent people on those flight logs, that have went to some of these islands and some of these.
A wedding venue that's anything but ordinary. In the heart of the Hudson Valley, Malaya Estate Vineyards offers timeless views.
Places, but I don't want you to miss what this is saying. It is saying that in addition to sexual rituals, Moloch worship included child sacrifice. Once again, that's another thing you hear people talking about, children being sacrificed. People talking about how, there have been documented where countries said that people came in and took, like poor countries, and paid them to take the majority of their kids to be, trafficked and sacrificed. You hear all of these things and you think that it's kind of sounds silly and it's a joke, and it's just letting you know that, listen, this is no joke. The children are being hunted after. They're being sought after. Satan hates the children because it reminds them of the love of God. It says Moloch worship included child sacrifice or passing children through the fire. That's what God was telling them. It says, it is believed that idols of Moloch were giant metal statues of a man's with a bull's head. Each image had a hole in the abdomen and possibly outstretched forearms that made a kind of ramp to the hole. A fire was lit in or around the statue. Babies were placed in the statue's arm or in the hole. When the couple sacrificed their firstborn, watch this, they believed that Moloch would ensure financial prosperity for the family and the future children. If you are anybody that have ever watched any videos dealing with powerful families, powerful politicians, powerful movie stars, pedophilia rings and all that, these are the types of things that you have heard. But listen, this goes way back in the Bible. that they were people that were passing their children through the fire to Molech, where they were worshiping him, believing that he was going to bring them certain power and certain wealth. Like, these things are real. I can't tell you everybody that is involved and not involved. You know, that's up to God to reveal. I mean, we got ideas of who are involved and not involved. Things that we hear about, a lot of these things are not made up. A lot of these things are going on. There are people that are trafficking these little kids. There are people that are sacrificing these little kids, taking lives. So many kids disappear every day that it is unbelievable and outrageous, because this is Satan's world. The Bible says he is the God of this world, and he has the minds of those that do not belong to Christ. So this is a falling world, and that's why he says, listen, you better get close to me and hold on to me. He that endures to the end shall be saved. This is not a game. Things that you're going to begin to find out that a lot of times we don't talk about in church is going to be disgusting to you. It's going to be almost to the point, if God was to open the lens of our eyes and allow us to see all the spiritual demonic activity that's going on around us and all of the things that are happening around us, even right next door to us, the neighbor next door or whatever have you, we would think God let us down. That's how wicked this place is. But God's fame to claim, his glory is in that he keeps his children in a perverse and wicked generation, and that he's going to deliver his children. The Bible says that he knows those that are his. So we're winning. Just because everybody's acting crazy and the world is dying, that doesn't mean that we're not winning. We are absolutely winning. The devil is playing for keeps, and one of the main things he wants to get a hold of is your child, or is somebody else's child. You may not have a child, but you need to be praying for these children. You need to keep your eye out on everything that you see, anything suspicious, because I'm telling you, it is wild out here, and it's been wild, but it seems like now more and more God is revealing these things, because it's going to get worse, and it is already getting worse. But you hear these stories of child, you hear all of these things, and a lot of times it's made a mockery of, and it's laughed at. And a lot of times, if you notice who's laughing at it and making a mockery of it, it's those that are in power, those that are controlling the news and all of these things. And I'm not saying that every single news report is fake, but this is what I will say. And I'm not a big person on news. I don't really watch a lot of news. I don't really follow politics and that. I don't get caught up and be arguing back and forth about who was the best president, none of that, because I understand that what the scripture says, that Satan is the God of this world and its kingdoms and systems. And not only that, this is the thing that we have to really think about, guys. Like, really think about this. The Bible says that Satan is the father of lies, that the truth abode not in him. So if he's the God of this world, the system, and he is the father of lies, we have to ask ourselves, how much can we trust the information that's coming out of the system? Remember, everything is about information. Information is key. That's that when we become saved, what do? We learn his word. We learn of him. We stand on his every word, all of the information that he is giving us, that he is downloading into us. So if Satan is the God of this world and the controller of the media and the systems, why do you think he's going to give you something that is going to be beneficial to you, or that's going to help you to have a better life? Of course he's not. And that's why God says, acknowledge me in all of your ways, so that I can direct your paths. That's why he said constantly read your word or try to listen to some type of scriptures. So when you hear somebody talking something contrary to what it is I am saying, you can identify it, and a red flag will go up like, well, that don't sound quite right. You know, no matter how high this person is in politics, or how big of a movie star they are. And this is the thing that mainly influences people to follow people, is their natural status. But God says this is not about natural, this is not about natural status or where you are naturally. This is all about spiritual status. This is all about having a spiritual treasure, the treasure that's in this earthen vessel. That's what makes the children of God rich. And I wanted to tell you guys, listen, because even the children of Israel got caught up in the worship of Moloch. Jeremiah 32 verses 32 through 35 says, because of all the evil of the children of Israel, this is God talking, and of the children of Judah, which they have done to provoke me to anger, they, their kings, their princes. So he's like, listen, they have provoked me to anger. He's going to say why. He says, their princes, their priests, and their prophets, and the men of Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and they have turned unto me the back. So he says, listen, they have turned their back to me, and not the face. Though I taught them, rising up early and teaching them, yet they have not hearkened to receive what? Instruction. That's what we was just talking about. It's all about instruction, information. God goes on to say, but they set their abominations in the house, which is called by my name, to defile it. So he says, they have set abominations in my house, the house of the Lord, to defile it. He says, and they built the high places of Baal, which are in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire unto Molech, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my mind. God says, listen, I commanded them not. He said, it didn't even come into my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin. Like, this is how crazy them passing their children through the fire is, or them sacrificing their children to the fire was. And that is what's going on today. And that's why Satan is constantly encouraging trials, sacrificing to Moloch. These individuals that are sacrificing these children to Moloch and violating these children through pedophilia and all that, is because Satan enjoys to see that. But what he makes them believe is that they're receiving power from it. And what they don't understand is the kingdoms belong to Satan. So they don't necessarily have to do that to little children to get that power, because it belongs to Satan. But he has it in their mind that if you do this, you're going to get more powerful and powerful. But I'm the one providing you this worldly power, because I am the God of this world. So that's why this is the thing that you have to understand about Satan. Satan is a beast. He's a monster. He's going to do whatever he can to go up against God and defile or try to defile the things that God loves. Like, this is what he does. And this is why we have to be on our P's and Q's, guys. This is why we can't follow behind every person we see of some type of influence and status in this world. I don't care if it's a preacher standing in the pulpit. We got to judge everything they say by his word.
It's about time I make Marvel Rivals the most hero-packed shooter ever, but first some hot redheaders trying to blast my ass a few new holes. All right, you rejects. Get Tyrannosaurus! And that's why I have...
This shit over with.
But we see here, even the children of Israel got caught up with it. Listen, this is not anything new, guys. This attack on the children, whether it's sexual, whether it's murder, it is not anything new. And I'm here to encourage you guys. Cry out for these children. Pray for your own children. Keep an eye on them. Be prayerful about what school they go to. Keep an eye on them, what they're being taught in school, because now we're hearing all of these different curriculums that they want to come up with and teach them about things that they don't even need to know about at the ages that they are. It is serious business, guys. And understand this, it's not only in higher up elites and politicians. These are things that are also going on in lower levels, like, pedophilia and the culture of pedophilia is not something new. We just got to really filter and watch some of these things that they're watching, some of the movies they're coming out with nowadays. It's hard to find a cartoon that's not talking something of a mature nature. Like, it's out of control. And another thing that you're hearing about a lot now that, once again, it's kind of dismissed as like conspiracy theory, or you just going overboard. There's no way. But the whole, not only child sacrificing, but the drinking of the children's blood, the belief that, it brings you power. Once again, this is all coming from Satan. Whoever believes this, whoever's involved in this, it's all directly coming from him. But, you hear these things and you think that these aren't things that aren't a possibility. But guess what? These are things that have been going on since the beginning of time. These are not new things. Years and years, thousands of years ago, that blood or the drinking of blood brings you some type of power, or it brings you health, or it helps you to age, better. Like, look it up. Like, these are beliefs. And once again, I'm not here to try to figure out who's doing it and who's not doing it, but I want you to understand how sick it is out here and how under attack our children is, and how God is laying the responsibility on us. Now, we know that ultimately we're putting them in his hands, but we do have a job to do. We do need to raise them up in the scriptures and make sure they're praying every night. Like, this is serious business, guys, because these aren't the only attacks you're going through. Like I said, internet, crime, drugs, like all of these things are grasping for their attention. But if we're not giving them the right attention and pointing them to the Lord, then guess what's going to happen? Something is going to get a hold of them. And, God forbid, it could be something that can possibly take their lives.
I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. He which testifieth these things saith, Surely I come quickly. Amen. Even so, come, Lord Jesus.
This is what 92 hair washes can do in 6 months. Not 10 washes, not 30 washes, exactly 92, because that's how long your hair growth cycle takes to go from dormant follicles to visible new growth. And thousands of men are posting their progress online, and the transformations are impossible.
Big retailers don't want you to have this zoom lens, but there's nothing they can do to stop it. So there's this new super.
Does anybody else just feel like this country is on a path to being totally collapsed?
New data showed that this was the worst January for workers since 2009.
The collapse has already begun. We're just not supposed to notice.
The real reason you're stiff after sitting.
You can live a very long time without getting old.
Just 1 spoon of this orange peel drink with this simple morning trick can reset your metabolism and put an end to stubborn fat for good.
Millions of women over 35 believe that not losing weight is just a normal part of aging. But according to a Harvard-backed study published in 2023, the real culprit isn't aging at all. Hidden toxins from the food we eat are blocking your metabolism and forcing your body into something called thermogenic resistance, which makes fat almost impossible to burn, no matter how little you eat. Fortunately, Dr. Reyes, one of the most respected neurologists in the U.S., discovered that a simple recipe with Spanish orange peel plus a secret natural red compound can flush these toxins out and reignite your metabolism. This simple morning ritual is already helping more than 7,000 women break through thermogenic resistance, burn fat again like they did in their 20s. It's quick, easy, and can be done every morning from the comfort of your home. I've included a short, completely free video in the Learn More button below that explains step by step how to do this orange peel hack and start using it today. My grandmother had tried everything. She was tired, bloated, and had gained so much weight that she stopped going out. We were desperate until we decided to try this orange peel trick, and in less than 2 weeks, she was slimmer, full of energy, and smiling at herself in the mirror again. It's a very short presentation, and to watch it, simply click Learn More right now. If stubborn fat is affecting you or someone you love, give this orange peel hack a chance before giving up. Every second is precious when it comes to taking back your health and confidence. Just click the Learn More button below this video and start today.
freedom, equality, and opportunity for all. Principles that the United States of America was founded on. These principles had noble intent and were only for a society built by and for European-descended people of a high moral character. A society where Christianity was once the cultural and moral foundation. However, these founding principles crippled the defenses of the individualist-minded white natives and gave the Jews free rein to consolidate power at an alarming rate.
And there are those who have known it firsthand, the political oppression of autocratic governments. Governments that deal swiftly and ruthlessly with those who dare to champion political liberty and freedom of expression. To the man deprived of civil rights in his native land, America offers the hope of freedom.
There is an ongoing war between whites and Jews over the cultural soul of the nation. Decent white people have been struggling to maintain a clean and respectable society, while Jews led the fight to make degeneracy and obscenity more acceptable. One has to merely switch on the television or surf the internet to realize quickly that it is a war which whites have thus far been losing, miserably. Since the 1880s, the Jews have been, and continue to be, vastly overrepresented in the making and distribution of every kind of smut, from print to film. The Jews' end goal of pushing this degeneracy is white genocide and white replacement. To infect the white mind with soul-rotting addictions that dismantle civilization itself, by seducing generations away from childbearing or marriage, leaving the nation hollowed out, demographically dying, spiritually barren, and culturally extinguished. It is imperative that we confront this plague head-on. We must trace its insidious origins, expose the architects responsible for subversive cultural revolutions, and the profiteers and enablers who normalized this corrupting filth.
The United States was one of the first countries received equal rights. George Washington embraced Jews as citizens, and over the next centuries, prominent Jews earned a place in every field of American success. Jewish communities in America flourished in the mid-1800s. In New York alone, the Jewish population skyrocketed from 6,000 in 1826 to over 50,000 by 1850.
Jews began emigrating to the United States in waves around 1880. When their population was only about 250,000. Within a decade, that number had doubled.
Then, in the 80s, from the south and east they came, as the migration fever spread deeper into Europe. There are families like this, who have suffered a religious persecution that could drive them from their homes, and scorn their right to worship in their own manner.
By the 1930s, the number of Jews reached 3 to 4 million. Many of these immigrants, if not most, were Eastern European Jews of the nastiest sort. They immediately became vastly overrepresented among criminals and subversives. A 1908 police commissioner report shows that while the Jews made up only a quarter of the population of New York City, they were responsible for 50% of the crime. One of their more common criminal activities has always been the sale and promotion of pornography and smut. The Greek-American scholar T.T. Timayenis wrote in 1888, "Nearly all obscene publications are the work of the Jews. The historian of the future who shall attempt to describe the catalog of the filthy publications issued by the Jews during the last 10 years will scarcely believe the evidence of his own eyes. Scenes of gross debauchery, representing drunken monks in the society of girls, priests lashing nude women, filthy groups, and other outrageous pictures are displayed on all sides with Jewish effrontery in the windows and stores. Jewish author Jay Gertzman in 2001 writes, Jewish erotica dealers seem to have become prominent in the field, soon after the Eastern European immigrants began arriving in record numbers in 1880. The best evidence of this, apart from the name of offenders as reported in newspapers, are the listings in the yearly ledgers of the NYSSV. This was a time when it was actually illegal to peddle smut in America, before our society became saturated in it, and the pornographers almost never prosecuted. The first anti-obscenity law was passed by the administration of President Ulysses S. Grant. This was known as the Comstock Act, named after Anthony Comstock, a special agent of the United States Postal Service. Passed in 1873, this act made it a federal crime to send through the U.S. mail any obscene, lewd, or lascivious materials, including contraceptives, abortion-related items or information, and other deemed immoral content. During the Civil War, soldiers were using mail order to purchase erotica books, playing cards with nude women on them, and other material. The deeply religious Comstock encountered widespread exposure to smut and vice in the camps. After the war, he moved to New York City and was shocked at the openness of obscene materials and the sex trade. He decides to launch a moral crusade against this scourge and founds the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice. He effectively lobbies Congress by partnering with the YMCA and personally traveling to Washington to testify and present evidence. Just as the word bigot or racist is used today, the insults of Puritan or prude were used by the media to mock those in favor of obscenity regulation. Federal law did not have a definition for obscene before the Comstock Act. American courts would adopt the British standard known as the Hicklin test, the result of the British court ruling of Regina versus Hicklin. Obscenity would now be defined as material with a tendency to deprave and corrupt those whose minds are open to such immoral influences. In the coming decades, as the Jewish population increased, so did a flood of obscene literature and challenges to the obscenity laws. In the 1920s, New York Judge John Ford's daughter brings home the book Women in Love by D.H. Lawrence. Ford is appalled by the contents of the book. One chapter has the two male leads wrestle in the nude with homoerotic undertones. Ford starts the Clean Books League in 1923 and looks for support to bring legislation that will strengthen New York obscenity laws. He finds much support amongst Catholics and Protestants, but lamented that he was unable to interest Jewish organizations. The Clean Books Bill was introduced in 1923, but defeated every single year until it fizzled out in 1929. The leading voice against the bill was Jewish book publisher Horace Liveright. He was able to rally enough support from other publishers and the media to defeat the bill. Support for obscenity regulation would decrease as the WASP elite was slowly losing influence and power to the Jewish media elite. By the 1940s, almost all major publishing houses were Jewish-owned or at least heavily staffed by Jews. The legal battle over obscenity would now be fought over constitutional grounds.
It's about time I make Marvel Rivals the most hero-packed shooter ever, but first some hot redheaders trying to blast my ass a few new holes.
All right, you rejects.
Get Tyrannosaurus And that's why I have 3 movies, baby! Yeah!
Now why don't you
Oh, right.
Grounds as a violation of the First Amendment. The ACLU was founded in 1920 by the Gentile Roger Baldwin, who was jailed for being a conscientious objector to World War I. The organization would soon become dominated by radical Jews, and remains so to this day. The First Amendment was intended to protect only political speech. To argue that it was intended to protect obscenity was once a laughable position. Author Lee Ann Wheeler writes that this was not their honest interpretation of the First Amendment, but rather was a deliberately concocted propaganda. She also writes that while the Gentile members of the ACLU tolerated government bans on public sexual expression, Jewish members such as Morris Ernst were more concerned about freedom of expression and public access to it. Ernst became the most famous lawyer in the fight against obscenity laws. His first major victory was over the book Ulysses by James Joyce. In the book, there were depictions of sex and masturbation, bodily functions, and four-letter words. The US had blocked imports of the book. The Jewish owners of the publishing company Random House told Ernst that if he would represent them and the book, they would pay all of the court costs, and that if Ernst won, he would get a royalty on Ulysses for the rest of his life. Ernst agrees, and they conspire to intentionally get a copy of Ulysses seized by US customs authorities. Ernst maneuvers the case into the court of Judge James Woolsey, the most liberal judge on the New York circuit. The judge clears the book, saying it did not act like an aphrodisiac to him. Ernst later writes an introduction to the book and earned hundreds of thousands of dollars in royalties. The ruling would begin the slow erosion of the current obscenity laws. It is ironic that the Jews who were at the vanguard of free speech when it came to obscenity are now at the forefront of limiting free speech in the modern day. The New York Society for the Suppression of Vice would have one more victory in 1948 against the book Memoirs of Hecate County, but their influence would begin to sharply decline. Another print medium would enter into battle at the courts, where there would be both heroes and villains. Jewish publisher Max Gaines, born Max Ginsberg, created the modern-day comic in 1933. The comic book industry has been almost entirely Jewish ever since. Left virtually unchecked in the 30s and 40s, comics became more extreme as Jewish publishers continued to push the envelope on taboos. In 1948, the Supreme Court decided the case of a Jewish book dealer Murray Winters versus the state of New York. Winters was charged with possession and intent to sell true crime tabloids such as the magazine Headquarters Detective. The Supreme Court struck down a New York state law that criminalized the possession and distribution of publications principally made up of criminal deeds of bloodshed or lust, saying the law was unconstitutionally vague. Articles in Time magazine, Reader's Digest, and Ladies' Home Journal would be written about the dangers of the effects of comic books on the youth. There were attempts at passing anti-comics legislation across the country, but these were all struck down as a result of Winters versus New York.
Some comics are good, but most comics are killers. They kill time, they kill imagination, and they kill the urge to read books.
This comic book describes a sexual aberration so shocking that I couldn't mention even the scientific terms on television. I think there ought to be a law against them.
Ironically, the figurehead who led the anti-comic crusade was Jewish psychiatrist Frederick Wertham. Wertham was very influential. His writings on the alleged detrimental effects of racial segregation were cited during the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision that forcibly integrated schools. After the Second World War, the public was looking for a cause of the rise in juvenile delinquency. The idea that race and genetics play a significant role in one's behavior was out of fashion due to its association with National Socialist Germany. Wertham opened a psychiatry clinic in Harlem, specifically designed to help poor blacks. At this time, blacks were only 3% of New York City's population, but were responsible for more than 50% of juvenile delinquency cases. An article titled "Horror in the Nursery" was published by Collier's magazine. Wertham is featured in the article and claims that his clinic work proves comic books lead to aggression, violence, and sexual deviance. What he doesn't mention is that all of his patients were black, and the article only shows photos of white children. Wertham claimed that the comic book character Superman was a Nazi and a fascist, even though the character was created by the Jews Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Superman actually represented the Jewish experience among Gentiles. Superman, like Moses, has his parents send him away as a baby to escape peril. He becomes a man of an alien race, blending in amongst the Gentiles as a journalist, changing his name from the Hebrew-sounding Kal-El to Clark Kent. With race and genetics being off the table as an explanation for juvenile delinquency, Wortham and others blamed comic books. And parents listened. In 1954, a Senate subcommittee held televised hearings on comic books. Only one comic book publisher testified, the Jew William Gaines, who was the son of Max Gaines, the creator of the modern-day comic. The fallout of this testimony would shock the nation.
My name is William Gaines. I was the first publisher in these United States to publish horror comics. I'm responsible. I started them.
Gaines would walk himself into a trap during questioning, when he admits that he deliberately uses comics to combat racism and anti-Semitism.
You use pages of your comic book to send across a message. In this case, it was against racial prejudice. Is that it?
That's right, sir.
You think, therefore, that you can get across a message to the kids through the medium of your magazine that would lessen racial prejudice. Is that it?
By specific effort, spelling it out very carefully so that the point won't be missed by any of the readers. I regret to admit that it still is missed by some readers, as well as Dr. Wortham. We have, I think, achieved some degree of success in combating anti-Semitism, anti-Negro feeling, and so forth.
Why do you say that you cannot, at the same time and in the same manner, use the pages of your magazine to get a message which would affect children adversely? That is, to have an effect upon their doing deeds of violence or sadism, whatever it depicted.
Because no message is being given to them. In other words, when we write a story with a message, it's deliberately written in such a way that the message, as I say, is spelled out carefully in the captions.
The next exchange would shoot the entire comic book industry in the foot.
There would be no limit, I think, to what you put into your magazine.
Only within the bounds of good taste.
Your own good taste and saleability.
Here seems to be your May 22nd issue, and there seems to be a man with a bloody axe holding a woman's head that's been severed from her body. You think that's in good taste?
Yes, sir, I do. For the cover of a horror comic. A cover in bad taste, for example, might be defined as holding the head a little higher so that the neck could be seen dripping from it, and moving the body over a little further so that the neck of the body could be seen to be bloody.
Well, you've got blood coming out of her mouth, you see.
A little.
And here's blood on the axe. I think most adults are shocked by that. This is the July one. Seems to be a man with a woman in the boat, and he's choking her to death here.
With a crowbar.
Is that in good taste, you think?
I think so.
The last exchange was plastered all over headlines, as parents were shocked and horrified that Gaines would nonchalantly call a severed head and a woman being choked to death as being in good taste. The comic book industry introduced a self-imposed comics code, where all comics had to be screened by the Comics Magazine Association of America and given a seal of approval. All of Gaines's titles folded except the most extreme of all, a comic called Mad, which he converted into a magazine to get around the regulation. Mad Magazine was created by Harvey Kurtzman, a Jew.
Pros, get ready. Your new floor and decor is here in Dearborn, with job lot quantities of tile, wood, and stone in stock, and the brand names you trust. Floor and decor is here. You ready? Now open in Dearborn.
Jew raised by communists. Mad is a subversive magazine featuring Jewish toilet humor and overt Jewish mockery of Gentile American culture, aimed at turning Gentile children against their parents. A Haaretz article in 2013 boasts that it is very much humor in a Jewish vein. 2 months after the Senate hearings, a dead homeless man washes up on the shores of New York, murdered by a gang of 4 teens called the Brooklyn Thrill Killers. The gang had been committing a crime spree for some time, attacking and torturing random people on the streets. They would wrap kerosene-soaked rags around a victim's arm or leg and set it on fire. The gang also stripped and flogged young women in parks at night. Jack Koslow, the leader, was a closeted homosexual and self-proclaimed white supremacist who was obsessed with Hitler. However, Koslow and the other 3 members of the gang were all Jewish. The psychiatrist Wortham went to interview Koslow. The leader stated that he was heavily influenced by an underground comic called Knights of Horror. The whipping of women in the comics sexually excited him, and he would occasionally dress up as a woman and self-flagellate. This wasn't enough, as he would start whipping actual women he found alone in New York, dressed as a vampire, also inspired by the comics. The whip he used was ordered from an advertisement in the back of a comic. The man behind the sadistic artwork in the Knights of Horror comic book would end up being none other than the co-creator of Superman, Joe Shuster. This wasn't revealed until decades later. Superman was first published by National Allied Publications, that would later become DC Comics. The owner was Harry Donenfeld, a Jewish immigrant who had been a pornographer in the 20s and 30s before going into comics. Donenfeld would make comics more extreme with titles such as Spicy Detective, Spicy Western, and Spicy Adventure. These were described by the National Organization of Decent Literature as wholly depraved and lascivious, and undoubtedly one of the deadliest plagues that ever threatened the moral life of a nation. The Comics Code tamed the industry to a great degree, but in its place, the plague of pornography would soon rise. The Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Delinquency organized a new set of hearings, this time on the topic of obscene and pornographic materials. All of the subpoenaed were Jews, except one Italian, who was merely a printer of Knights of Horror. All of the pornographers pleaded the fifth before the subcommittee, except for one named Samuel Roth. 2 years later, Roth would be the defendant in the most earth-shaking Supreme Court obscenity decision in American history.
I proudly accept this great honor on behalf of my unbelievably talented staff of editors, writers, and artists who were vilified in the early 50s by a Senate subcommittee on juvenile delinquency and by other magazine publishers who claimed we had destroyed the youth of America. It has taken almost 40 years for our work to be recognized.
Samuel Roth immigrated to the U.S. from Eastern Europe in 1904. He would work odd jobs before going into publishing, where he would continually push the boundaries of what is considered acceptable. Throughout his adult life, he spent a total of 9 years in prison for distributing obscene material such as the D.H. Lawrence book Lady Chatterley's Lover and Ulysses. Roth even had a bizarre episode in 1934 when he became a self-hating Jew after losing his business to other Jews. He wrote and published a book called Jews Must Live, where he confirms many of the traditional anti-Jewish claims. He would write, "I am a Jew who has been brought to the point where he so loathes his people that he thinks in terms of their destruction. Jews had made a hideous swamp of Western civilization. Our major vice of old, as of today, is parasitism. Anti-Semitism is a primal instinct of mankind, which preserves the race against total destruction. The Jews have deserved all of their pogroms and persecutions. Jews had done nothing but stab America in the back, even though it is the most patient of the Western nations. There is blood in the eye of Uncle Sam as he looks across the ringside at the pudgy, smiling Uncle Moses." Roth denounced the book almost immediately after publishing, and the following year he began publishing obscene, sensational, and pornographic material almost exclusively. In 1956, Roth was indicted on 4 counts of obscenity and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment due to his periodical Good Times and the hardbound journal American Aphrodite. American Aphrodite had a story where characters masturbate a unicorn, and the unicorn kneels down and laps up its own semen. The case went to appeal in the Second Circuit Court, but the decision was affirmed by all judges. One Jewish judge, Jerome Frank, wrote a statement that the Supreme Court should finally weigh in on the matter of obscenity and set a new precedent. The Supreme Court would rule that obscenity was not protected by the First Amendment, but the definition of obscenity would be changed from the Hicklin test to the more broad Roth test. The Roth test defined obscenity as material where a dominant theme taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest of the average person, applying contemporary community standards. Who is the average person? How does one measure community standards? The wording of the Roth test can be debated and picked apart in myriad different ways, and it is why it was by far the most significant decision in the history of American obscenity law. Roth would serve 5 years in prison, and by the time he was released in 1961, The things he was publishing were extremely tame to what was available now on the market. The Beat generation would reap the benefits of the Roth decision and would be the precursor to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the 60s and 70s. The Beats were all junkies, degenerates, and sexual deviants, such as the Jewish Allen Ginsberg. Ginsberg, raised by communists, was a lifelong homosexual and predator who was a vocal supporter of the North American Man-Boy Love Association. He once wrote that while laying next to his father in bed as a child, he would get an erection and rub against his father's leg. His poem titled Howl is the work of a deranged mind high on peyote. One line of the poem describes those who let themselves be f***ed in the ass by saintly motorcyclists. Jewish bookstore owner Lawrence Ferlinghetti received assurance from the ACLU that he would be defended for selling Howl. Ferlinghetti's store is raided 3 weeks before Roth versus United States. Jewish lawyer Jake Ehrlich, who the TV character Perry Mason was based on, takes the lead of the case. The prosecution would have to prove the work had no redeeming social or literary value, an impossible task. The defense brought 9 literary authorities to argue that it did have value. The charge was reversed, and Howl was found not to be obscene. Jewish publisher Barney Rossett would be emboldened by the Howl decision. He was a far-left radical who owned Grove Press, that published radical black authors such as Amiri Baraka, who wrote the line, "Rape the white girls, rape their fathers, cut the mothers' throats." Rossett publishes Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence and the much more extreme Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. D.H. Lawrence was somewhat of an anti-Semite, calling Jews smug and elitist and the great haters of the human race. Although Lady Chatterley's Lover was explicit for its time, Lawrence was against outright pornography. In his essay, Pornography and Obscenity, he wrote, "But even I would censor genuine pornography rigorously. It would not be very difficult." Writing to author Aldous Huxley, Lawrence said, "You mustn't think I advocate perpetual sex in and out of season. Nothing nauseates me more than perpetual sex in and out of season. God forbid that I should be taken as urging loose sex activity." Lawrence died in 1930 and would surely be displeased the Jews used his books to clear a path for genuine pornography. Lady Chatterley's Lover was cleared in court and would become Grove Press's most successful publication, funding future legal battles. Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller is an all-out assault on decency. Miller himself was not a Jew, but was an extreme Philosemite and was married to a Jewess. In the semi-autographical book, he fantasizes.
Welcome to Herb Chambers Toyota of Auburn, where you'll find an exceptional selection of new Toyota cars, trucks, SUVs, and EVs, as well as an incredible selection of Toyota certified used vehicles. Experience our legendary customer service today at Herb Chambers Toyota of Auburn.
About having sex with her. "Oh, Tanya, where now is that warm of yours? There is a bone in my 6 inches long. I will ream out every wrinkle in your Tanya. After me, you can take on stallions, bulls, rams, drakes, St. Bernards. You can stuff toads, bats, lizards up your rectum. I will bite into your and spit out 2 franc pieces." Tropic of Cancer was taken to court in over 60 different obscenity trials. Grove Press, using the profits of Lady Chatterley's Lover, funded the vendors of every single one of these cases.